All right, so as Shree said, I'm Sam Roundy. I own a company called TestStand. We do automated test consulting, like many of you. So our giants are females. I chose Fabiola. She's one of my heroes. I spent some time with her teaching and different things, and it's interesting to hear her story. She is a very great person. If you don't know her, I recommend you get to know her. She's done a lot of great things in her life. So let's dive into it. So today we're going to talk about package manager, because when we talk about TestStand deployment, I found this to be the best way to deploy TestStand as of late. We'll talk about the CLI, what you can do with the CLI, and then we'll talk about the mobile device demo and how I would deploy it using package manager. So without further ado, basically what deployment is, first we got to define that. It's really the ways of getting your IP to other people. And so you have to ask who needs it and what is it? And there's really two kinds of audiences that we deploy to. There are distributing our code to other developers. Source code control is probably the most common way of doing that, just sharing repositories or VOBs or whatever kind of source code control you use. VI Package Manager has been a staple in our industry for a lot of years. And GPM is fairly new. I highly recommend this tool. I'm sure Compose Systems will talk about that as well. It's a great tool from MGI. Derek Trepanier wrote it. He's no longer with MGI though, but it is a great tool. If you haven't used it, I recommend looking into it. And then there's the other side of it where we're distributing our binaries to the end customer, or we call this deployment, if you will. I've heard people try and use VI Package Manager for this, both with TestStand applications and with LabVIEW only applications. I personally have never dealt with that. I've just heard tales, and most of them weren't good. The traditional way is with just installers, setup.exe. It's very well known. It's really good for monolithic applications. So if you have a big chunk of code or a very monolithic application that you're trying to get out there, and you just want it to go in setup.exe, that's great. I've heard of the copy paste method, which I do not recommend. Unfortunately, that's the way it is in a lot of places that I've been. So, and then the last one, or the one that if you haven't heard about in the last few years, is NI Package Manager. It's free. It's great for component-based applications or plug-in applications, and it's really great for TestStand, as we'll see in a minute, hopefully. And just as a side note, it is built on Debian 2.0, which is a Linux distribution packaging style. So it's not like they're just pulling it out of thin air. It's been used for many years. So a brief overview of NI Package Manager. When I use the term Package Manager, I'm not talking about VI Package Manager. When I introduce this to a lot of people, they always confuse the two. So just so you know, if I say Package Manager, I'm talking about NI Package Manager in this presentation. So let's look at the different components from a very high level. You have the application. So let's open that up. So this is basically your interface into what's installed on your machine. There's kind of three tabs up here. There's updates. If any of the packages you have installed need to be updated and you're subscribed to certain feeds, we'll talk about feeds in a minute. They would show up here. These are packages that are available to you from feeds that you can install on your machine. And then this is what's installed on my machine right now. You'll see if you scroll down, it's just basically the the typical stuff that you would install from a NI distribution. You can also sort by maintainers who created the package. I have a couple packages from MGI. I have a package from JKI. And you could also search up here. So if you want to search for anything with CVI, any packages that have the word CVI in them, you can do that as well. And you can actually remove packages by just checking on it and clicking remove here. I'm not going to do that right now. You can actually repair them. This is actually a newer feature with the last few versions of Package Manager, which is very handy. But yeah, that's basically the interface. There's some settings you can do. You can subscribe to feeds. We'll see that in a minute when we create our TestStand feed. So any questions before I move on?
Yes, I have a question. You mentioned it can be compared to an installer. So do you mean we can create our own package as an executable to have an automatic installation process from Package Manager?
Yeah, so if you have Package Manager installed on your machine, you can double click on any package and it will just install.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. But generally, you don't have just one package. You have a bunch of packages that you need to install. So you either put them in a feed or you put them in what they call a package installer, which I'm not going to get into package installers in this presentation, but that is also a good solution. So
because a lot of people we deploy solution doesn't know anything about this package. They are just end user and they want an easy install process. So if we want to develop a solution based on Python plus LabVIEW plus TestStand, they don't mind about that. They just want the operator interface running with an easy installation process. So do you think Package Manager will be suitable in this case?
yeah, I do. So I'm going to demonstrate how one way to deploy with feeds, and hopefully that will give you some insight into how easy it is for your end user to use Package Manager
Thank you very much.
update the machine. And then I don't get into it in this presentation, but if you can use System Link, that is a great way to manage your machines. I love System Link. I use it all over. So it's also a great way to manage your PCs without the end user even knowing what's happening. So
good.
That's also great.
Sam, sounds like you're volunteering for another presentation for next time.
Yeah, I could do that. System Link's kind of tricky to present on because you have to have a server set up and stuff. But yeah. Any more questions before I move on? All right, so the next component is the actual packages. Basically, this contains your payload. It really tells Package Manager where to put your payload. So it's technically just a zip file with a bunch of extra information. But naming is a big deal. And as you can see from this diagram that I have here, there's kind of this, what they call kebab case, because it looks like a shish kebab, because you have words with dashes between them. So it looks like a skewer going through all your words. And so that's actually the name of your package. And that's very key because that has to be unique for every package. And then you have underscores separating the different parts of your package name, and you have your version, and then you have your operating system, and then you have your bitness. The bitness is not necessarily the bitness of the contents of the package. It's the bitness of Package Manager that it works on. So just be aware of that. So you can actually put 32-bit software into a 64-bit package, if that makes sense, because the 64-bit package is working on the 64-bit package manager. It's just used to install the packages. So don't get hung up on that. So that's what a package is, and I'll kind of show you how to make those during the demo. Then the next component that I'm going to cover are feeds. Feeds are basically these three files on the top right here. There's the packages file, the packages.gz, and the packages.stamps. The packages file is really the one that is basically a list of packages to install. A feed, contrary to popular belief, does not contain any packages. All it is a pointer to a bunch of NIPKG files. So basically it has to be relative to those packages. So if you move your feed and you don't move the packages relative to that feed, your feed will no longer work. And then from NIPM, when I do the demo, you see how we can subscribe to feeds. And then I recommend, well, you actually have to, I don't recommend this. You have to put them in different folders because they have to have those names exactly like that. And on Windows, you can't put, obviously, files with the same name in the same folder. There is a feed manager that NI has graced us with. Alan Shu, I believe, is the one who wrote this, and he did a good job. I use this when I do my demo. I'll show you it. But basically, it's an online. You can just pull it offline. It's free. But it's a way to configure feeds and then manage your feeds, so you can actually add packages to feeds, remove packages from feeds, all that fun stuff. So any questions about feeds? All right. The last component I want to cover with Package Manager is the CLI, or the command line interface. To get there, you use this path here, program files, National Instruments, NI Package Manager, NIPKG. Basically, what this is an API into automating Package Manager. So you can, excuse me, you can do endless things with the CLI. You can create tools. We'll see one of the tools that we've created for doing feed and package management, for stating your machines, a lot of different things you can do with this. I want to highlight a few of the commands. The most important is the help, because if you can use the help, then you can figure everything else out. So basically, at the command line, you type NIPKG help, and it will show a list of all the commands that are available to you. So if I actually, let's pop that up so you can see this. Oops. If I go to C program files, National Instruments, NIP, oops. I can do NIPKG and help, and you should see a list of a whole bunch of the commands that are available to you through the command line interface. And then if you want to see the help for any of those, you could do NIPKG help and then type in the command that you want to see the help for, and you can see which parameters you can pass to it. It's just your typical Unix style help, so, or Linux style help. Some other commands that I use a lot are the install, of course. Sometimes I don't like going through feeds because they're slower and people have to manually do it. And if you want to automate updating your machine with packages, you want something to state your machine essentially, you want to go through the CLI to push those packages out. And you can actually, there's one of the flags that you can pass is this allow downgrade, whereas feeds you can't downgrade. Excuse me. With feeds you can't downgrade your packages, but with this you can actually downgrade your packages. So we'll uninstall the same package of newer version and install the older version. So if you're testing newer packages, but then you want to push your machine back to an older state, you can use that flag, which is very helpful. And I did run up against the Windows command line text restriction. Apparently, you can only have 8,191 characters because when you pass 150 packages to a command line, especially with the full path of those packages, you can get up there in your text. So be wary of that. The pack is a good one if you're creating packages. And then there's a whole bunch dealing with feeds if you're going to write your own feed tool. But all that being said, Alan has also written a nice library that you can download that you can use in LabVIEW that basically underneath the hood is just going through the command line interface and doing everything that you can through the command line interface. So it's very nice. We use it all the time when we build tools and different things. So any questions about the CLI? All right, you guys can still hear me? That's good. We've written a package builder as one of our tools. The cool thing about this is it's just a standalone, quick and dirty application. So if you have a couple raw files essentially that don't need to be like traversed, or you don't care about dependencies, and they're just standalone on their own, you can create packages really quickly. So we use that occasionally for if we have some sequence files that we don't actually have to do anything to, but we want to put them in a package, we can just use this really quickly, so we don't have to go through other tools that may have a lot of overhead with them. So there's a lot you can do with this. So if you kind of look at the overall, how do we deploy using packages? What we do is we usually have a centralized location where we put our packages. That can actually be in your source code control, or a shared drive, or something like that, or a database. But we usually just build all our packages to a certain location. And then in this case, if you're using feeds, your feeds can then subscribe to the packages that you want. So let's say we have a test PC1 that is testing power supplies, and we have a test PC2 that is testing modems, but we have like 3 of those out on the floor. And so we would create a feed specifically for the test PC2 that's testing the modems, because it's going to have different packages than the other PC. And so with PC1, the power supply PC, it's going to subscribe to a different feed. And so basically, if you were going to use the feed distribution method, you would basically tell people, hey, open up Package Manager before you run the test, see if there are any updates or any new packages, install all of those, and then run the test. And so that would be kind of part of their protocol. And there's different ways you can do that. I don't use feeds on everything just because it's a very manual process. At least without System Link, it is a manual process. And so we use automated tools to do a lot of this underneath the hood. So any questions before I move on? All right, so let's talk TestStand and distribution. So many of you are familiar with the out-of-the-box. Let's see where out-of-the-box demo. The mobile device tester, basically, this ships with TestStand. It's just a demonstration on how to call a whole bunch of different types of. I actually really like this demo. I use it all the time to test my plugins, just because it calls all of the different adapters, and it has all of the different step types. So it has like numeric limits, multi-numeric limits, string tests. And so it has a good variety of different code modules and different step types that you can test against. And so whenever I create a plugin, I always run the mobile device test just because I know it will tell me what's broken in my plugin. So basically, when you run this, you get the dialog that pops up, assuming this will run, and it says, oh, well, you get the serial entry, and then you get the simulation dialog. All this is really for is so you can force steps to fail if you want to test failures. And then it just runs through the test, and then you get your report, which I really like because it has a very good array of different things on the report. It has images that it embeds, and it has graphs that it uses out of the box graphs, the ActiveX graph that ships with TestStand. Has a lot of good things in it. So that's the mobile device. It's a very monolithic sequence. All of your code is just right there. But let's actually look at how you would traditionally deploy this. Traditionally, you would open up the TestStand deployment utility, and then you would hope that you get everything included in your workspace if you're using a workspace in a project. And then you would hope that when you go to the distributed files tab, you are checking all of the right things. And you hope that all the dependencies can be found. And then when you build, you cross your fingers and hope that it happens. I have seen people try and build a TestStand deployment with over 20,000 VIs. I don't know if that's a lot. That seems like a lot to me. And it takes a really, really long time, and it's really slow. And that's especially annoying when the only thing that you had to change was a wait time in one of your steps and then redeploy. So that's where you get the most bang for your buck out of Package Manager is quick, simple, modular deployments. So let's look at what I would do if I were going to redeploy the mobile device tester. I would break it into these different layers, essentially. I would create a client file, which basically the purpose of the client file is to override any callbacks, and it decides which TAL to call, or test. I'm calling that a TAL. That's a term I made up. Test abstraction layer. And so really that's the only purpose of your client file is to determine which test abstraction layer to call. Your test abstraction layer is responsible for the specific limits and parameters for a specific UUT. So if you're testing an iPhone or a Galaxy or a Pixel, this TAL layer would determine which test modules to call and what limits to use for those test modules. And it also determines what goes on the report. So that's the entire purpose of that test abstraction layer. And then the test modules layer is really just simple sequence files that are perform simple things like taking a measurement or doing an RF test or doing a button test or a video test or a microphone test, as you'll see in the mobile device demo. And really, it's just a parameterized black box. It should not put anything on the report. That should be decided by the TAL. And it's a very, very simple sequence files. We'll see those in a minute. And then you have your hardware abstraction layer or your code modules, whatever you're using on the back end to actually do your LabVIEW stuff or your C# stuff or your CVI stuff or whatever language you're using. So these are your adapters, essentially, your code modules. So in the case of the mobile device tester, you have your Galaxy S10 as your TAL layer. That's the device we're testing. You have all of these test modules. It chooses to call these ones, and then you have all your code modules underneath the hood. And if you come along and you add an iPhone to your system, you don't have to change anything except for that add a new TAL, and assuming that you have all the right test modules. And then that TAL layer would basically call some different test layers or test modules, and then let's say you had to add a Pixel 3X to your machine. All you have to do is add a new TAL file, and it will work. So let's hop over to LabVIEW here. For the sake of time, I've just put everything in a single project here. I have a whole bunch of packages being created. And you can see here's my client file, here's my test modules, and here's my TAL files. And I think I have like a support package because there's a DLL that's shared by a bunch of test modules. If that's the case, you want to break that out into its own package, just because if you ever have to change that, you don't want to go change it in 50 different packages. And since they all share it, that's fine. I also, with LabVIEW, I make project libraries, and those get sucked into the appropriate test module package, depending on what it is. So to create a new package, basically, let's add a new TAL to our system here. So basically, if I open up this iPhone XS, let's say, and I want to create a, let's save that as, I don't know, what's another cell phone that we can test? My phone, we'll call it. So let's say that we don't have to do the 82.11 tests, and we don't need to do the volume tests or any of the button tests really, except the power button. And let's say on the battery voltage, we want to set our limit to, 1 and 7. I'm just throwing up some numbers there. And so we save that off. So we have my phone TAL in there. So now we can come and add that file. Oh, I may have to browse to that. That's going to be in, sorry here, mobile device, this folder here. Is that right? 32-bit, yeah. So we'll add that file, or where is it? No, not test modules. TAL. So what was it? My phone right there. Boom. And so now we got to create a new package for it. But because I already have some TAL packages created, I'm just going to duplicate one of these. And then basically when you create a package, it looks similar to a lot of your other builds in LabVIEW. So we'll rename this to my phone. And then this is the package name. Remember, it has to be kebab case. And it has to be lowercase. That's something I didn't mention. You cannot use uppercase letters in here. And so that's your package name. Your destination is setting up where you want things to go on your deployed machine. Your source files is actually what you're going to deploy. This is your payload. So in my case, I'm going to grab that my phone file, and I'm going to put it in this. I'm just putting everything in this public folder and components for called mobile device demo, basically MDD. So I'm just going to throw that in there. And so basically when this package installs, it's going to take my phone TAL.sequence and put it in that MDD folder. You can add shortcuts if you want to desktop. And then here's your package attributes. These are things that will show up in Package Manager, things like that are displayed to the world. So I want to do my phone there. And I always just copy and paste this down, because I never know what the synopsis is supposed to be. And then you can put a description. You can put your maintainer. That's important because that will show up in that drop-down list in Package Manager. And then you can put your email address. And I usually do things as application software, but if it's a driver or infrastructure, these have a whole bunch of different meanings. You can click help and read about what they mean here. And then if you want to put your a link to your website, you can. You're going to include license agreements. And then on the dependencies tab, I'm not going to put any dependencies here, but basically this is a way to say this package can exist on this machine unless these packages are also on the machine. And technically, because I'm calling a lot of these test modules from there, I should be doing that, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. And then you can also do your version. I'm going to reset this to 0 since this is the first time I'm building, so I copied the other one and it had the build of 1 on there. And then with the advanced, what you can do is you can do pre and post install and uninstall scripts if you need to. So you can say, go do this first and then run the package, or after you run the package, after you install the package, do this. So you can add batch files and different things right here that when you install a package, you can have those things run. So this is actually what you would use if you already had an installer that you wanted to put in a package, like a setup.exe or a MSI file or something, is you would add that to your project. You would come in here and then just add it, and so that it runs your setup.exe. So any questions about this? It's a lively group. So now I can build that. You can see it created the package right here. And now I can just double click on this to install it, or I can add it to a feed. And because I'm going to demo how to do feeds, we will we'll look at that. So if I go to, where is it? If I open up Feed Manager, this is the tool that you can get from National Instruments. You have all the source code for it. I actually just built it into an executable to make it easier. So basically, I'm going to configure a feed, which means I'm going to create a feed. I'm going to call it mobile device demo. And I'm going to put my feed in this path here and hit OK. So now I have a feed, but there are no packages in it. When I hit OK, actually, I got to select the feed now. Actually, it did show that there were a bunch of packages in it. I think that's just residual. So I do need to add, though, I need to add that new package that I just did. So to add it, I will click Publish Package, and then I'll go choose. Sorry, we got to go back to the packages and do this. Here it is right here. So we're going to add that package. So now we have the My Phone in there, and that added it to the feed. And so now the feed should exist with the new package in it, and you can kind of manage, remove packages or add packages and all of that fun stuff. So that's great. I've created this feed with a whole bunch of packages in it. Now I need to go subscribe to that feed from Package Manager. So basically, I go into this settings up here, click on feeds, hit add. We'll call it mobile device demo. You can browse to it. Actually, if you don't name it, it will automatically put a name in there. So now I'm subscribed to that feed, and you'll see all of these packages just showed up in this far right. That means these are available in a feed. And I can actually just check this box up at the top and install them all at once. Boom. Hit next. You're doing it. It says reboot, but that's probably because I missed something in one of the packages. I don't really need to reboot. And so that's really it. Those packages are now installed. You can click on the maintainer, or you can search for, mobile device up here, and it will show all the ones with mobile device in the name. And so basically, I've deployed my entire TestStand system. And so if I go back to my desktop, oops, yeah, you'll see I actually put a shortcut. One of the options inside of LabVIEW, inside of the packages, was to put a shortcut, and I put a shortcut to my client file. And so I can just double click on that now from my desktop. Hopefully, oh, it popped up here. And this is the client. This is the client file that I have. And when I run that, you'll see that it will pop up with a serial number and a part number. and it will show all of my tals available. And my phone just automatically shows up there because this dialog is just looking for any files with tal in them. And so when I choose my phone, it will run it, and you'll see that it's missing the tests that I removed, and the power on should have the new limits that I put in there. And so if I hit OK, the LCD takes a minute. You'll see on the report that there are the new limits, and it's missing the buttons and another test. So essentially, that's kind of the long way to deploying this. But once you have it set up, it's really nice because now you're just editing very small parts of your code. And if you've ever dealt with the medical world or the medical industry, if you can prove to the FDA or whoever's auditing you that you only need to validate a little piece and nothing else was touched, and so you say, look, all these version numbers for these packages are the same except for this one because this is the code that I actually changed, your validation process is a lot shorter. You can shorten it from several months down to like a day if you're lucky. And so that's the advantage of using, first of all, modular code, and second of all, packaging it individually. So any questions?
So Sam, they've got this package builder application, NI, right? I mean, so is that any useful to us, or do you know? Oh, there you go. Sorry.
You're talking about this one?
Yes.
Yeah, Trent would kill me if I didn't talk about this. So, yes, it is useful. I don't use it a ton. I use it here and there. I believe it's going, and Trent can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's going to replace the TestStand deployment utility. And that's really how you're going to see TestStand being distributed in the future. It can do a lot of things, and it's really good. We just create such simple packages that, because usually what I do is I build my PPLs first in LabVIEW, because LabVIEW is really good at building PPLs. And then I actually develop my TestStand code against binaries. So when I'm working in TestStand, I'm usually talking to binaries, not raw VIs. And so I'm usually just coding against PPLs, or because we have a HAL that's all in PPLs. We have our UUT communication layer. We put it in a PPL. And so I'm usually just talking to binary code already. So that alone takes a lot out of the TestStand deployment process itself when you're developing against binaries. And because we do that, our builds, our TestStand builds, are just so simple that it's usually 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 files that we're just throwing in there. So I don't know, but this is a very good tool because it's a standalone tool, and it's also free, and you can use it. You know, you don't have to have LabVIEW or TestStand to use it. You can actually just deploy your C# applications with this, which is really nice. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Great.
Doesn't look like it.
So conclusion, package manager is free. It's great for deploying to your customer, to your end goal. It's not as great for giving developers packages or code. Has a really nice, easy to use CLI, and it's really great for plugin based applications. Here's some needs. and I think they've actually fixed one of these as I wrote this. It would be nice if you could make dependencies conflicting.
I do it?
Niet.
Ja,
Meaning,
straks
if
op de stage gaan testen.
oh, is there a question there?
Ik heb gisteren met een metaalstreepje hier.
Someone's talking. I didn't know if they were asking a question. So the conflicts are basically if I have a front end callback, let's say in TestStand, technically you can only have one front end callback in TestStand. It would be nice if you could say if a package with front end callback already exists, remove it first, then install this package. That would be a nice to have. And the other problem I have with Package Manager is NI really likes to cram their stuff down your throat. And I say that in all honesty. Basically, if out of the box, if you noticed, I wasn't subscribed to any feeds. It is quite a process to get NI Package Manager to that place. Because everything that you install from NI will subscribe to a ni.com feed. And then you're just linked to all of these crazy feeds. That is very annoying. And also, historically, and I think they fixed this, whenever you would install a package manager, it would automatically try to connect to ni.com, and it would cause errors. And so we had to create our own distribution of package manager that wouldn't do that, which was kind of a pain. And then feeds are really slow and they can't be downgraded. So what I mean by slow is it's a lot easier to use the command line interface to just push a bunch of packages out at once. Whereas if you have to subscribe to a feed and then push the packages out and then unsubscribe from the feed and all of that, it takes quite a while. And packages and feeds cannot be downgraded. So you can't, essentially you can't state your machine to a older version if you are using feeds, if that makes sense. So I'm out of time. In fact, I'm a minute over, but that is it. Thank you.